Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements.
And it is happy 50th birthday to Saturday Night Live.
Can you imagine? 50
Lorne
years?
Michaels been there. I mean, he was having
He's still there.
Yeah.
Still alive.
And a few years ago, he said he was going to retire after the 50th year, but now he's.
Is it
walked
this
that
weekend
back.
that they're doing the Big 50?
It's
Or next weekend?
next weekend.
Next
Yeah.
weekend.
I wanted
Okay,
to jump on it because, you know.
Well, I mean, SNL has a big place in our family. We watch it a lot, but I've ceased from watching it over the last several years because it's become so overtly left leaning. But when we were growing up, it was still left leaning, but everybody was a target.
Yeah, I mean, when you saw the Chevy Chase doing the
Gerald Ford
stumbling around, that was hilarious. They were, you know, not kind to Jimmy Carter.
No.
They were certainly not kind to Ronald Reagan.
No.
They even went after Bill Clinton.
They did go after Bill.
Yeah,
they went after Bill Clinton in a great way.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, Dana Carvey and his imitation of George H.W. Bush, you know, put that into the modern lexicon.
Yeah.
You know, not gonna do it. Not this junk. Sure.
Well, and it's one of the things that's interesting about Saturday Night Live is that it has been in the past such a cultural juggernaut that literally, if you went up to someone and you said, "Did Sarah Palin ever say that she could see Alaska from her front porch?" They'd say, "Well, yeah." She never said that.
She never
Tina
said
Fey
that.
said
Tina
it.
Fey said that. Dead on impression. And that's what I mean. It became so much part of the lexicon. And actually, we need to give Dana Carvey probably the biggest props because not only did he did a spot on imitation of George H.W. Bush, but also of Ross Perot.
Yeah.
In the same skit.
Right.
In the same skit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like SNL, and one of the things that's interesting is because it's a sketch comedy, it has been able to survive the cord plug or the cord pulling or whatever you want to call it, cord cutting, because so much of what they do is you're able to do on social media.
Yeah.
You know, so they still get just tons of exposure through social media because of the way that they've done this. They didn't, obviously, when they started, they didn't have any idea that was what it was going to be.
The cast, I would argue, has not been as cut through as casts in the past. I would say over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I mean, and I will admit that it's through the eyes.
I mean, Kenan Thompson is still there.
Yeah,
but a lot of people have
it's
left.
Through the eyes of, you know, we kind of came of age with Saturday Night Live, so we remember those that when we were really, like, it was edgy for us to watch as kids, you know?
Well, like something as bizarre at the time as Wayne's World.
Yeah.
And yet that was such emblematic of...
It became a movie.
It became two movies. But it was so emblematic of how kids were living their lives in the Midwest. That was just part of what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, two best friends sitting in their basement... You know, having a cable access television show.
Right.
Why not?
Why not? I mean, I think that a lot of it in this day and age, because they have not been equal in their in who they've roasted, they've been a little bit one-sided. It's now, I think, in some ways, a lot of people hate watch it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's true. And I think it really started under Obama. They did not really go after Obama. And then when Biden was elected, the only person they had go after Biden at all was Jim Carrey's spot-on imitation of him, you know, during the debates and during that. And then it just went quiet. And I just think that creates just an element of disrespect.
Yeah. So the real test.
It's like you need to be, you know, going after everybody to have some credibility.
Right. So the real test as to whether they remain a comedy juggernaut,
a comedy institution,
is whether or not there's going to be a sketch when they do their opening night, you know, about a week and a half from now, and if they have a sketch about exploding pagers. Because that's the big news.
Exploding pagers and walkie-talkies.
Yeah. I mean, for those, I suppose it's possible you're listening to this podcast, you don't know what we're talking about, but I find that hard to believe.
That would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because it's the funniest.
It is.
It's the funniest counterterrorism offensive thing ever.
Well, I mean, man, Israel has got it together. I mean, the fact that so Hezbollah decides they're going to stop using phones because they feel like they can be tracked. So they
feel like
decide-
Israel's listening in on their
Yeah,
conversations.
they probably were.
Probably were.
And so they said, oh, we're going to order a bunch of pagers for everybody. Well, they ordered them from a shell company that was created by Israel.
Yes.
And then Israel was able to plant explosives in the pagers.
On the batteries.
And then they were able to simultaneously explode all of these thousands of pagers.
Thousands, like 4,000.
Thousands of pagers.
And then identify where those explosions were and identify who those Hezbollah agents were as well.
Oh.
I mean, it goes really
Exposed,
deep.
yeah.
Yeah. So the lead article right now on Daily Wire, Israel did not intercept Hezbollah pagers that exploded. It made them.
That is unbelievable. I mean,
So,
that's
however, unbeknownst, I'm going to read a little bit of the article.
Okay.
Unbeknownst to Hezbollah, Israel had been secretly manufacturing the pagers that Hezbollah was buying for years. So this wasn't just a recent thing. They had punked them for years.
my goodness.
The Taiwanese company Gold Apollo had contracted with a company called BAC Consulting in Hungary to manufacture the pagers. BAC Consulting was one of the 3 shell companies that Israel created to mask the true manufacturer of the communications equipment is Israel, which was Israeli intelligence.
it's just amazing. Oh my goodness.
So BAC Consulting created the real pagers for numerous customers to create the perception of a legitimate company in order to get picked up for the contract to be produced by the pagers for Hezbollah. I'm sorry.
Absolutely
It is
amazing.
the greatest. It is unbelievable.
I mean, it's got to be one of the greatest examples of counter intelligence, counter strike that we've ever seen.
Oh, easily.
I mean,
Easily.
that's just it's astounding. It's astounding.
And funny in some regards. Well, no, it's hilarious. You have to laugh.
Well, and I mean,
Because the sheer, first of all, the sheer audacity of Hezbollah thinking that, we're going to change our strategy. We're going to move from cell phones to pagers and walkie-talkies. And those walkie-talkies and pagers are being made by the Israeli Mossad and the IDF. And they stayed quiet. I mean, to be able to do this for years and stay quiet about this for years.
yeah.
And I guess the reason they exploded them is that one of the Hezbollah agents kind of found out.
So they were worried that
They were worried that it was going to get exposed, and so they immediately detonated them.
Boom.
Kaboom.
Kaboom. Well, we'll see if SNL's got the
and men carry, electronics where normally
Yep.
front pockets, back pockets, and there's all these
Side
videos,
hip.
side hips, all these videos of certain nether regions being splattered all over the marketplace.
Yeah.
And then you told me about a picture of a toilet.
Picture of a toilet that is half gone.
Kaboom.
Yeah. It was wow.
And so the leader of Hezbollah this morning is like, well, this is the declaration of war, as if all the missiles and everything
Really?
else over the last
Really?
year being flown, flying into
Hezbollah-
Israel has not been.
Hezbollah just fired a long-range missile into the middle of Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a week or two ago. I mean, that's not a declaration of war?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
No, I think that was really the reason for this, and that was they'd had enough.
Well,
They were going to do it eventually, and they had had enough and said, okay, we're going to take out your senior leadership. One of the walkie-talkie, here's the other funny part. So they're actually having a funeral for one of the people who died because of the pagers. And then the walkie-talkies
Oh, my
blow up
goodness.
at the funeral.
at the funeral.
You just can't make it up, ladies
you
and
can't.
gentlemen.
I mean,
it's just
literally,
so
if you,
good.
if you read this in a spy novel, you would say, "Boy, that's just so far out of
At
possibility."
first, they thought it was like malware. No, they actually, put basically C4 or some kind of, explosive on the battery. So when the battery heats up, kaboom.
So did they just send like a pulse or
Sent
something?
they just sent a signal to it, which heats up the battery, and then all those virgins waiting for you.
Yes.
With bated breath.
One of the classic memes I saw was the pager screen that said 72 virgins.
Yes, I saw that too.
Okay.
We are so unfeeling, Sean.
Oh, I know.
There are innocents who were perishing.
There was an innocent.
4,000 men injured.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah. And, you know, they're.
And Israel said there's more coming. So who knows what the next phase will look like?
I did read an article about how people in Lebanon are now like they're turning off all of their phones, they're turning off their microwaves, they're turning off their TVs. They're afraid because they think. But what they don't and this is a good example of how the terrorists terrorize their own people.
I am a terrifying terrorist.
Israel's not targeting televisions of average Lebanese.
No, of course not.
This was going after
or hospitals or anything
Right,
like that.
right.
These pagers were passed out to the worst of the worst.
to the terrorists.
To the terrorists.
Yeah.
The terrifying terrorists.
So
As
pulling
Ahmed, the dead terrorist, would say.
way back to local news this week.
It's just too funny to even get off. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we have to move on.
Yes.
We have a limited amount of time.
I'm
A
sorry.
lot to cover. So this week, and let me set this up a little bit. Stephen Richer, our county recorder, someone that you have not thought fondly of, someone that has taken
and there's some reasons for
a
that.
serious amount of heat from election deniers, Carrie Lake being the lead of those, saying that he somehow, even though he wasn't on the ballot in 2020, he had something to do with the 2020 election, which is actually Adrian Fontes.
Yeah.
So 2020 election happens, and what I've always told people is that that Maricopa County did not steal the election for Joe Biden because the person who was in charge of the elections, Democrat Adrian Fontes, lost his election.
Yeah.
So if he was going to steal it by 11,000 votes for Joe Biden, why didn't he steal the 4,500 he needed to win for himself?
Well, he's got other problems right now.
Well, he does, and that's where we're going. So Stephen Richer, who I think has done a good job as the county recorder, a lot of cleanup of the rolls. He discovers within the last couple of weeks that Arizona, and this is important for people to understand, Arizona is the only state in the union that requires that you prove that you're a citizen to register to vote, actually have proof. All other states, you just sign a declaration that says, yes, I'm a citizen.
Yeah.
But they don't require a proof.
Like a passport. Like
Right.
A driver's license.
A birth certificate.
Yeah.
Whatever. So, but here in Arizona, we do require that.
Imagine that.
Now, since 1996, when we required by law that to get a driver's license, you had to prove that you were a citizen, that was basically the proxy for being able to register to vote. Because if you are a citizen able to get a driver's license, then by default, you're a citizen able to register to vote. What he found out was that people who had received a license prior to 1996 and did not have to give proof of citizenship, if they had lost their license or moved and it got a new one sent to them. So let's say you got your license in 1992. In 1998, you moved. Oh, I changed my address. I need a new license. They send it to you. The system makes it appear that your license was now issued in 1998. And so for election purposes, it's, he's a citizen. He's proven.
Yeah, I'm following
But
you.
they haven't. So there are 100,000 people in the state of Arizona who are registered to vote who fit this category of having registered without proof of citizenship because they used their driver's license that was issued prior to 1996, but then reissued after 1996.
After 1996. Gotcha.
And Stephen Richer says we have to get proof of citizenship from these people, or they can only get the federal ballot. Because under federal law, you don't have to prove that you're a citizen to get
Which
a
is why we
federal
need the
ballot.
SAFE Act.
Right, which is what we have two. So we have two, there are literally two different ballots in Arizona, federal only, and then a regular ballot. And Adrian Fontes said, no, it's too late to do that for this year. And Stephen Richer said, nope, we have to do it. And so he's suing Adrian Fontes.
Well, I mean,
Good for him.
that is a welcome, development, I guess.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, My guess is that the vast
Because
majority
they're
of the
both
100
they're both in favor of jungle primaries. You know that.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
And we both oppose them.
Yes.
And God willing, that will be thrown off the ballot.
Well, I mean, 99% of the challenge signatures for Arizona's ranked choice voting ballot initiative are duplicates.
Well, no, I think what there are 40,000 duplicates.
40,000 duplicates, and 99% of those.
99% of those, the special master that the court appointed to look at those said, 99% of these 40,000 are duplicates, which is way more than
Which is way
they need
more.
to keep it off.
That's how incredibly ridiculous it is.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about
We
this
will,
one
we
more.
will be having some people on to talk about that
Yeah.
as well, depending on where it goes.
Yes. If the lawsuit that they filed is successful, that we can have them on to talk about the success. And if it fails, we can talk about why we should vote against it.
What we're going to do next.
So, speaking of voting, there's an election coming up. There's a presidential election coming
Just
up.
a little bit.
And you and I have texted back and forth a little bit over the last couple of days. And we've both reached the same conclusion.
We do that a lot, actually.
Yeah. And
So we don't just convene once a week. We're feeding each other different stuff.
Right. I forgot to mention this. I was going to mention this when we were talking about SNL, so I'm going to do it now.
Oh, okay.
So the question is, are we going to be around doing this show in 50 years?
Could you imagine?
I don't know.
We'd be ancient.
But
No.
But I look at
mean,
it as
the
like,
fact we've gone 3.5 is a miracle
it's
in
a-
itself.
yeah, it is
I
a
mean, in
miracle.
terms of podcast longevity, it really is great.
yeah, that is true. But I was thinking, okay, SNL, that's kind of a cultural juggernaut. Blah blah. What are we? We are the Thursday morning, thoroughly boring white guys. And there's an audience for that, obviously. I mean, we've got a burgeoning audience.
And we
which-
appreciate every
Thank you.
single one of you who listen. Thank you so much.
Subscribe, like,
Give us
wherever
as
you
many
are
stars as
listening.
you'd like.
Yeah, all the
We
stars.
appreciate it.
We like all the stars. So you had texted me, and you said
I text you a lot, so
but this particular text, it was just a one-line text. Democrats want Donald Trump dead.
yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Well, I mean,
pretty evident.
that's what I text you was that, I was thinking just about everything that's transpired over the last week, especially with the gunman, who we won't name on the podcast, trying to assassinate Donald Trump on hole number 6 of his own golf course.
right.
A Secret Service that obviously did not sweep the perimeter of the golf course, which is inexplicable. It's actually just basic procedure. And the reaction afterwards, which was Donald Trump brought it on himself
Yeah.
with his rhetoric about cats and dogs being stir-fried in Springfield, Ohio. And that type of reaction, especially from people like Morning Joe and the rest, is just unbelievable. And I just came up, and the theme of that reaction is Democrats are rooting for him to be assassinated. They want this to happen.
That seems pretty clear based on the rhetoric that you see out there.
And it's disgusting. Because if they didn't want it to happen, then Karine Jean-Pierre, the worst press secretary in modern history, would stop saying that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy from the podium.
Yeah.
And so would Kamala Harris, and so would Joe Biden. I mean, they call up Trump and give their platitudes, and he's being incredibly gracious in terms of, I talked to the vice president. She was very nice. We had a nice conversation. I talked to Joe Biden. He was very nice. We had a great conversation. But they're still going out there with this rhetoric that has existed ever since the Russia stuff.
Right.
That Donald Trump is this existential threat to America, and he's not.
He's not.
No
And-
more than Kamala Harris is, and no more than Joe Biden is.
Right. And I
The
think that
Republic will endure.
it will. And the thing that is I guess we shouldn't be surprised if you have spent as many years as they have basically saying that Trump is Hitler. Of course somebody's going to say, if somebody had killed Hitler, that would have been very good.
Then 6 million Jews would have been spared.
We need to kill this guy.
Yeah. It's sick.
It is sick. And And I do worry that we haven't seen the last of these attempts.
No.
I mean, at the Long Island rally, yesterday or the day before, they found a bag of explosives in a car at the rally site and arrested somebody. I mean,
What's amazing, and I think after, obviously the first shooting where Trump's ear was grazed and he was pretty shaken up, he was off his game a lot for the month after that. And now I think he's found his footing again. And his reaction after this was a big middle finger to the whole thing.
yeah.
I mean, I think if it were you or me, we'd be home. Like, I don't know if I'm going to want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And think about this. And somebody was saying this the other day, and I thought it was a great point. He doesn't need to do this.
No.
He's a multi-billionaire. He's got all these great properties, one of which he was playing golf very peacefully the other day. He can go home and rebuild his empire, which is still pretty extensive. He can hang out with his grandkids. He's got, kids who are pretty not messed up, like our fair president's kids. And he has children who love him, grandchildren who love him. A wife apparently has endured a lot as well. Go home. He doesn't have to do this.
Yeah, I agree he doesn't have to do this. Here's why he can't help himself. And that is he can't be seen in his mind. His legacy can't be that he lost in 2020.
Yeah.
He has to win this to vindicate himself.
Yeah.
This is very much a person, his own personal driven type of thing.
Well, nobody can, regardless of what happens in the election, nobody can take away the courage that he has shown throughout the process.
I won't take anything. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, ego aside, and wanting to right the wrongs of 2020, whatever that means for him, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Lesser men would have packed it up.
I would think. in
some ways.
But it is,
and I got my issues with Donald Trump and the way he does things.
Yeah, we both do.
I mean, just like that debate. As much as the cards were stacked against him, he could have flipped the script.
Yeah, he
wasn't able to.
He walked himself into all those traps. But it does. I mean, it makes me wonder if there will be a time again where we have someone who runs for president because they want to accomplish something big for freedom. And specifically, I call back to Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a guy who didn't need to run, but he was motivated because he felt like communism had to be destroyed. And he ultimately concluded that he was the only one who was willing to actually do it.
Well, and also, I mean, precisely that. He had a vision for the country, right? He had a vision for what he wanted to accomplish. And I would argue the last three Republican nominees have not really had a vision.
Right.
Donald Trump with "Make America Great Again." That's a great slogan. It was Reagan's slogan,
from Reagan.
But he has not articulated clearly what he wants to do for the country and what the aspirational piece of the campaign. John McCain, not an aspirational leader by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, totally punted, during the financial crisis. Mm-hmm. Biggest mistake of his campaign was suspending his campaign.
Yeah.
Because when it came to economics, and I had many interactions with John McCain on this, it was not his strong suit.
No.
With all due respect.
No.
Mitt Romney, not an aspirational guy. Great bank capitalist, not an aspirational guy. Could not articulate what he wanted to do for the country in the way that Obama could.
Right. I will say that Romney in the first debate did a really good job of laying out the vision.
Yeah.
And the reason I know this is because we made his words into an ad that was probably one of the best ads of the 2012 cycle. That was a pro-Romney ad. The best ad of this cycle was an anti-Romney ad that Priorities USA did, but that was by far the best, unfortunately. But he did have some ideas that he was putting forth. The problem is that by the time he got to the second debate, he stopped talking about those.
Yeah.
And he was just
No, he
way
wasn't.
too much on the defensive for the rest of the campaign, which if you are the challenger, you have to stay on offense. You have to
Yes.
force the incumbent to be on defense. And guess what? Trump is not forcing Kamala to be on defense. He's just taking all these
and
things.
there's so much to defend. It's a smorgasbord, and she's proven time and time again that if you get her in an unscripted environment, she is word salad sandwich. She has no core.
Yeah. Well, and
How
it's
many
interesting-
accents are we going to hear from her over the next 48 days till the election?
How many are left?
Yeah.
So
let's put her in front of the Irish American Association and see what we get.
I will cut your taxes. I don't know how to do an Irish accent. That's pathetic. I was walking the kids because it's now the weather's getting nicer.
Oh
I
my
can walk
gosh.
the kids. It's good. So I have
Hallelujah.
someone up the street from where I live has 3 Harris Walls signs.
Wow.
Well, 1 Harris sign, 2 Harris Walls signs. So I found it amusing because the theme coming from the Harris campaign has been, it's time to turn the page. Let's turn the page. Let's turn the page, right? You're hearing that
The Fuker.
all over. And,
I'm the future.
and
Okay.
the sign in the yard said, Harris, let's finish the job. I'm like, okay, is it we're finishing the job or are we turning the page? Because it can't be both.
Yeah.
It can't be both. And therein lies where Trump could make some headway against Harris and the whole.
The 2 issues between now and election that Trump just all he has to do is talk about is the economy and the border.
Yeah.
Not dogs and cats being stir fried.
No.
Then can move away from that, but pivot to why it's important that we should be concerned about 20,000 Haitians living in a small community that can't support
Well, and
them.
the problem.
And the policies that led to that decision to put them there.
Yeah,
And he's got to be able to articulate that, and he can't.
Well,
and that's the frustration.
it's because he surrounded himself with people who live online. Laura Loomer, all these guys. I mean, it's like that's not reality.
Yeah.
You know, walk outside, talk to normal people, freaking pick up a phone and talk to swing voters. No, but I mean, the problem with equating the Haitian issue
and that's-
with the border is that it's not the same thing.
No.
Because these were people who were refugees that were brought in. They flew over the border. They didn't come through the border.
No, but you can equate it from an immigration policy that it absolutely has failed.
Well, yeah.
And you know, in the aggregate.
Right. But nobody other than the people in Springfield really understand the Haitian issue. So focus on what we see every day with this porous border and how that's impacting our lives.
Oh, I would argue that even in our fair community over in Maryvale, some people would understand the Haitian issue and the Venezuelan issue and the Ecuadorian issue because they're all getting dumped over there.
Yeah.
And it's become one of the most dangerous places in Phoenix because of it.
It hasn't always been dangerous.
It has, but it's worse now.
Is it?
Yes. Yeah. I was just over at GCU yesterday for another event, and I was talking with some of the one of the deans there and some of the professors, and they are really getting in lockdown mode at night because the surrounding area is becoming so violent.
Really?
Yes.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That's
And trying to educate their students on not going out at night, not wandering to different areas around outside of campus, which is kind of a fortress anyway. But if you are, don't be walking or using your scooters or anything like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the huge swaths of different immigrant communities that have settled in that area and the gangs that have settled in that area because of it.
Well, and I think,
So even in large urban areas like us, there are areas that we're sitting here in a studio in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're relatively insulated from what is happening just to the west of us.
Yeah.
And not very far.
Right. So all of this talk about politics, about elections, got me thinking about the Constitution.
Oh,
Because
because it was Constitution Day.
Constitution Day this week,
Yeah.
right? And so it's been 237 years. Do I have that right?
1787,
1787.
89 ratification, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, it would, and you know, the famous Ben Franklin quote when he's asked, "What do you have, a monarch or a republic?" And he says, "A republic if you can keep it."
Yes.
And he said "you" because he knew he wasn't going to be around very long, and he wasn't. But you know, it would be worth our listeners to go back and read the Constitution. Just, it doesn't take long. Read the Constitution. You might be surprised by some of the things you pick up. I'm sure you read it before, but maybe it's been a while. It's an amazing document. And there's no question, and this is true of what George Washington said, what Ben Franklin said, many, many other founding fathers said, is that they understood that they were literally guided by God
Yeah.
in bringing this Constitution to
Oh,
bear.
now you're sounding like a Christian nationalist.
Yeah. Well, so be it. But what they created was something that really the world should aspire to, and has in some ways. I mean, there have been many countries that have adopted constitutions that, in some measure, you know, acknowledge the freedoms and liberties that we have been given by God, but nothing has come close to what our founding fathers put together with the Constitution. more
Well,
than
and,
200 years
and
ago.
put forward, you know, before in the Declaration.
Yeah,
And the Declaration was not so much between the government and the people. It was between the people and their creator,
right.
which is I make this post on July 4th every year. There's something I wrote years ago, and it's just the radical proposition of our country is that our rights come from God and not from government.
Right. Well, and what's
And you say that today, and people call you Christian nationalists.
Yeah.
And I look at them and I go, so be it. All right, bring it.
The thing that has been interesting is because I spent some time reading about the Constitutional Convention, and one of the things that I picked up this time in reading about it, because I've every year we get to this point, I kind of ponder on it a little bit. I should do it more, but you know, there were 3 people who refused to sign the Constitution that were delegates,
Okay.
and
I think I knew that.
at least one of them, and maybe 2, it was because there wasn't a Bill of Rights,
Yeah.
and which obviously came. And it just made me realize that even at a time when because we romanticize the Constitutional Convention, at least I do, and the founding fathers, but these were human beings who had differences of opinion, who had very vigorous arguments, and some of them hated each other. But they still came to the point where you had 12 of the 13 states represented, because Rhode Island didn't have anybody there. And you were able to get the vast majority of those people to agree on something as a framework. And the question is, could we do that today? I don't know. I really don't know.
You know, there's some people who believe that Democrats and Republicans should not be friends. That
is sad.
that the other side is evil, no matter what. And I just find that proposition ludicrous.
We're Americans.
And the times when we've come together when we're Americans first is what that Constitution represents.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the times when we lean in to the blessings of our Creator is when we become the nation that our founders believed that we could be.
Right.
Times like after 9/11. You mentioned the Reagan years. I mean, I watched for the first time in a long time the other day, Morning in America, which you could argue won him that election. That was one of the greatest ads ever.
Yeah.
And it's the argument that, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And with Reagan, we were. And people were proud of the country that they had. You know, hopefully we're asking that going into this election. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I would imagine most people would say no.
That's right.
And
But it doesn't. But it doesn't have to be a. I'm supporting Trump, and I hate the other side. It doesn't have to be I'm supporting Harris and I hate Trump. I mean, we are all Americans. This is a democratic process. We have votes. We have an electoral college. These are all systems that were set up to allow us to function and to continue. And as you said earlier, the republic will endure.
Yeah, the hatred that you see on either side towards the other side, I just don't understand. That to me is the antithesis of what the founders wanted.
Yeah.
And yes, they had disagreements. Yes, some of them probably did hate each other, but they didn't hate their creator. And if you recognize that your creator is actually the one who's in charge,
Yeah.
you know, you can take things the way, you know, if Harris Waltz wins, you know, I have certain ideas of why that would be a bad thing for our country, but also I don't serve them.
Right.
And if Trump wins, I don't serve Donald Trump.
Right.
You know, and going back to the founding, those were men who served a higher power and recognized that their rights were divinely created by God.
Yeah.
And their existence was because of the blessings of the Creator. So as long as you keep that in your heart, you know, politics is politics. My in-laws are Warren supporters, for goodness sakes, but I love them. You know, my mother-in-law is skipping dippity-doo-dah to vote for Kamala. But I love her.
Yeah.
She's great. You know, the people who kind of get wrapped up in that, good Lord, get a life.
Exactly. Yes.
Come
Understand
on.
that it's bigger than this.
I saw this argument in the Hill the other day, like Patrick Mahomes' wife and Taylor Swift are on two opposite sides of the political. Can they be friends? And I'm like, this has got to be the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, people even in our Congress, God bless them, Democrats, Republicans. There's the cameras, the people who are performing for the cameras, who hate the country, I would argue, and just want clicks and coin and chicks for some of them. And then there's the people who are there every day. They want to do what's right for the country, and they have friendships. And yeah, they might not agree on the color of the sky, but they're friends.
Yeah.
You know, Ted Kennedy and Orrin Hatch were the best of friends, and there was no two people in the Senate who disagreed on more.
Yeah. That's a great point. Well,
And that is the enduring blessings of our republic.
yeah. If you're a Democrat, go find a Republican, give them a hug. If you're a Republican, go find a Democrat.
'Cause we all need
give
it.
them a hug. We all need a hug.
We all need
All
it.
right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. God bless.
Take care.